Welcome to Beneath the Noise. 2 days. That's all it took. I downloaded TikTok, minding my own business, watching a few funny videos, maybe a couple of aesthetic morning routine clips, nothing too personal. And then suddenly, there it was. A video about the comorbidity of CPTSD and bipolar disorder. General mental health matters kind of post. Not a generic self-care tip. No. This was hyper-specific, eerily precise. Something about disassociation and trauma responses, delivered in that fast-paced, jump cut style, complete with text overlays and a sad indie song in the background. And just like that, I had been clocked. A chill ran through me. Had I DM'd my trauma to a bot? Was my therapy session somehow broadcasting itself? The more I tried to brush it off, the more unsettling it became. Because this wasn't just some glitch in the system. It was the system. The unique horror of being known by an unknowable force. It wasn't even a slow build-up. I hadn't even liked anything mental health related yet. But the algorithm, the all-knowing, all-seeing digital oracle, had already figured me out. 2 days in, and I wasn't just scrolling, I was being seen. TikTok took one look at my data crumbs and served me a CPTSD video like a waiter who already knows your order. This brush with the contemporary experience left me with eerie emptiness. The eerie emptiness of being watched by the big brother corporations that control our economy. They know who you are, and they are tracking you based on your habits. But how? How did it know? I hadn't typed my diagnosis in the search bar. I hadn't been seeking out that kind of content by any means. Yet TikTok's algorithm had me pegged faster than a therapist with a clipboard and a decade of notes. This isn't just some party trick. This level of precision here is not magic. It's data. And it's not just TikTok. Every platform you use, every search you make, every ad you scroll past for a half second longer than usual, it's all feeding a system designed to know you. And more importantly, designed to profit off of you. Because this isn't just about eerie accuracy. It's about how tech companies, advertising, and AI track, predict, and monetize mental health struggles. It's about how every anxious late-night Google search, every impulsive doom scroll, every desperate attempt to self-diagnose in a comment section, all of it turns into money for someone. And most of the time, that someone is not you. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about how we got here, how our struggles became data points, and how platforms profit off of our pain. Let's talk about the history of data tracking, the rise of algorithmic exploitation, and why online therapy might not be the safe space it pretends to be. Let's talk about how the algorithm knows you're mentally ill. Because if you've ever gotten a too accurate ad for therapy, or a perfectly timed TikTok about your deepest insecurities, you already know. The machine is always watching. To understand how TikTok can figure out your mental health before your therapist does, we have to go back. Way back. Before the era of hyper-personalized algorithms. Before the internet was a data goldmine. Before your every move was monetized. Companies were already finding ways to track, categorize, and sell consumer behavior, even back then. Because this did not start with social media. The algorithm is not some new villain. It's just the latest evolution in a long history of businesses knowing more about you than you know about yourself. Loyalty programs have existed for centuries, with businesses finding ways to incentivize customers to return long before computers, data tracking, or AI-driven marketing. The earliest recorded examples of this date back to the late 18th century, when American retailers gave out copper tokens that could be redeemed for future purchases. These were simple, physical incentives designed to encourage repeat business. By the 19th century, businesses moved away from tokens and introduced stamps and coupons. Most famous were Sperry and Hutchinson's green stamps, introduced in 1896. These stamps were given out at grocery stores, gas stations, department stores, and customers could collect them and redeem them for merchandise. The system was wildly successful, leading to similar programs in Europe. Despite their success, these early loyalty programs had a major limitation. They weren't personalized. Businesses had no way of knowing what individual customers preferred, only that they participated in the program. That would change with the advent of computing and digital tracking. But we're not quite there yet. As mass consumerism exploded after World War II, companies realized they needed more structured ways to retain customers. The 1950s and 60s saw the rise of credit card reward systems, where users would accumulate points based on spending. But the real game changer came in the 1980s, when airlines launched frequent flyer programs, like American Airlines, who was the first to offer miles-based rewards. This marked a key shift. Companies weren't just rewarding spending, they were tracking individual behaviors and tailoring incentives accordingly. Other industries quickly followed. Hotels like Hilton and Marriott adopted similar models. Credit card companies like American Express integrated loyalty perks to encourage brand loyalty. By the late 1980s, businesses were actively gathering customer data to promote personalization. The 1990s and early 2000s ushered in the internet revolution, transforming how loyalty programs functioned. Instead of relying on physical stamps or coupons, companies introduced loyalty cards that tracked consumer purchases digitally. Retailers like CVS, Safeway, and Kroger launched membership cards, offering discounts in exchange for customer data. These programs weren't just about rewarding purchases anymore. They were about building consumer profiles. Companies started analyzing what people bought, and when they bought it, and how often. At the same time, e-commerce giants emerged, with Amazon leading the charge. Unlike traditional retailers, Amazon didn't just track purchases, it could track browsing behavior and how long users looked at products, what items they clicked on and didn't buy. This gave birth to recommendation algorithms, which didn't just reward past purchases, but predicted what customers might buy next. By the mid-2000s, loyalty programs were not just about rewards anymore. They had evolved into data collection tools, shaping how businesses interacted with customers. The explosion of social media in the 2010s changed everything. Companies realized they didn't just have to track what people bought. They could track what people talked about. Facebook, Google, and Instagram pioneered hyper-targeted advertising, using user data to deliver personalized ads. Loyalty programs also evolved, moving beyond traditional purchases to include social engagement. Suddenly, people could earn rewards for liking posts, leaving reviews, or referring friends. turning everyday actions into data points. This is also when dynamic pricing and AI-driven personalization took off. Airlines and hotels would adjust prices based on user behavior and demand, while retailers send targeted coupons tailored to individual spending habits. Instead of earning generic points, customers received customized offers designed to maximize spending. Subscription-based loyalty programs also became popular, like Amazon Prime, where people pay upfront for membership benefits rather than accumulating points over time. This created a new kind of loyalty, a locked-in ecosystem where customers felt obligated to keep spending just to justify their membership. Meanwhile, data collection reached new levels. Companies used machine learning to analyze buying patterns, location data, and even emotional triggers. AI could now predict consumer behavior before the consumer even knew what they wanted, a far cry from the simple stamp-based loyalty programs of the past. And as social media platforms optimized for engagement, algorithms evolved from simple recommendation engines to powerful prediction machines, designed not just to show you content, but to shape your behavior. Before 2020, social media was already deeply woven into our daily lives, but it still felt like a complement to real life, rather than a full-fledged replacement. Then came the lockdowns. Suddenly, the internet wasn't just a place to connect. It was the place. Social media wasn't just where people scrolled when they were bored. It became where they lived, where they processed grief, where they sought comfort, and where they found validation. Zoom school, remote work, FaceTime holidays, our digital lives became our only lives. And tech companies took note. Engagement numbers skyrocketed. TikTok in particular saw an unprecedented boom. In 2019, the app had about 680 million users. By the end of 2020, it had over 1 billion. Algorithms adapted accordingly, feeding people more of what kept them watching. And for many, that meant highly specific, deeply personal content, especially about mental health. I count myself lucky because I was able to get therapy during the pandemic. Because during the pandemic, therapy wasn't just inaccessible. It was practically impossible. Waiting lists grew, in-person sessions halted, and the stressors of literally surviving a global catastrophe meant that everyone was feeling the strain. While traditional mental health support was hard to come by, an alternative emerged: TikTok therapists. Licensed professionals, self-proclaimed mental health advocates, and completely unqualified influencers alike started posting bite-sized videos explaining everything from trauma responses to ADHD symptoms. And people ate it up. After all, when you're stuck in the house, spiraling, and suddenly a charismatic stranger on your For You page tells you you're struggling with object permanence and it might mean you have ADHD, that can be life-changing. At least it can feel life-changing. And sometimes these videos were helpful. Many people discovered that they had undiagnosed conditions through TikTok. Some found validation for their struggles that they've never been able to name. But the problem wasn't the information itself. It was who controlled its spread. Because I cannot make this any clearer. I really can't. TikTok is never serving this content out of compassion. It wasn't highlighting mental health videos because they were making people healthier. It was doing it because it keeps people scrolling. Because the dirty little secret about social media platforms is that the algorithm doesn't care if the content is helpful. It only cares if it's effective, meaning it holds your attention. In mental health content, does it hold attention? Self-diagnosis content keeps people watching. If you've ever seen a video list symptoms you relate to, you've probably watched it all the way through. Maybe even watched it twice. Vague, relatable content tends to go viral. Posts like, if you struggle with blank and don't know why, you might have blank. Those spread like wildfire because they're broad enough to apply to thousands, even millions of people, and the algorithm loves that. Also, emotionally charged content drives engagement. People don't just watch mental health videos, they comment on them. They tag their friends. They share them with captions like, OMG, this is me. That kind of engagement makes the algorithm push that even further. And what happens when your entire feed is suddenly reinforcing the idea you might be mentally ill? You start to identify with it. Because the algorithm is a mirror, but a distorted one. For some, TikTok became an accidental diagnostic tool. People finally found explanations for their lifelong struggles, but for others it created an identity crisis. Suddenly every quirk, every bad habit, every anxious thought was pathologized. Struggle with motivation? Maybe it's executive dysfunction. Daydream a lot? Maybe you have maladaptive daydreaming disorder. Hyper-focused on projects? Maybe that's a symptom of ADHD. Do you feel emotionally intense? Maybe it's a sign of BPD. The problem is, without real medical guidance, the line between insight and confirmation bias blurs. TikTok does not show you a balanced mix of perspectives. It doesn't offer disclaimers that say, hey, this is just one possibility, maybe check with a doctor. It just feeds you whatever keeps you engaged. And now, before I go any further, I want to be clear, self-diagnosis is not inherently bad. In fact, for a lot of people, especially those in marginalized communities, those who cannot afford therapy, those who have spent years being dismissed by doctors, self-diagnosis can be the first step towards real understanding. For many, stumbling upon a TikTok about ADHD or trauma responses isn't just a fluke, it was validating. It explained something they've felt their whole lives but never had the language for. And that kind of realization can be life-changing. The problem isn't self-diagnosis itself. The problem is how platforms like TikTok warp and sell you shit with it. Instead of being a thoughtful process of self-reflection and research, the algorithm turns it into a content pipeline, feeding people hyper-specific, emotionally charged videos designed to keep them engaged, not necessarily to help them and give them clarity. That's the difference between thoughtfully considering symptoms over time and being shoved down a rabbit hole of if you do this one thing, you definitely have whatever disorder. Truth is, understanding yourself takes time. It takes research, self-awareness, sometimes even trial and error. But TikTok doesn't reward slow, nuanced exploration. It rewards the fastest, stickiest, most viral explanations. And that's where people get caught in a loop of self-identification and misinterpretation. Not because they're gullible, because that's what the system is designed to do. So if you've ever found validation in mental health content online, that's real. That matters. And this podcast is not about dismissing that. It is about pulling back the curtain on how these platforms manipulate that validation for profit. At first, the rise of mental health content seemed like a positive shift. People were talking about mental illness more openly than ever, Stigma was decreasing. But tech companies are not in the business of helping people. They're in the business of monetizing them. Once platforms realized how profitable the mental health boom was, they leaned in hard. Therapy apps flooded the market. Ads for services like BetterHelp and Talkspace exploded. Wellness products surged, like meditation apps, mood tracking journals, and dopamine boosting supplements all started appearing in people's feeds. Self-diagnosis also became a business model. Certain influencers turned their content into brands, selling books, courses, and merch about mental health. What started as a community-driven movement just became another way for corporations to make money. And the worst part, many of these platforms don't actually want you to get better. If you did, you'd stop engaging. Because TikTok creates a mental health trap. Maybe you've experienced it. You see one video about anxiety, then another, then another. Before you know it, your entire feed is full of mental health content. And while some of it might be helpful, a lot of it is just keeping you in a cycle of hyper-awareness about your struggles. You start to analyze every behavior through a clinical lens. You start to see trauma responses where there just might be normal stress. And you begin to expect mental illness, reinforcing those experiences. That's not healing. That's conditioning. And this isn't just happening in some vague, abstract way. It's happening to us right now in ways we don't notice until they hit us in the face. Something that comes to mind is when I was on Medicaid. I got an Instagram ad about being on Medicaid. I was just harmlessly scrolling my feed, and there it was. It wasn't just about health insurance in general. It was about Medicaid in my state and my plan specifically. As in somehow the system knew my exact insurance status and decided to target me with ads about my benefits that I might be entitled to. I remember sitting there staring at my phone thinking, how the hell does Instagram know that? Because I never searched for it. I never posted about it. Never said anything out loud, really. But the data trail was there. Whether it was pulled from an app, a purchase, or some invisible link between platforms. My financial situation was being tracked, categorized, and monetized. It's one thing to suspect you're being watched, and it's another to have a private detail about your life served back to you as an ad. Like a reminder that you're never offline. And that's just ads. The tip of the iceberg. Which brings me to one of the most egregious violations in mental health privacy in recent years. Let's talk about BetterHelp. BetterHelp, a prominent online counseling service, serves as a stark example of how sensitive mental health data can be mishandled. Founded in 2013, BetterHelp quickly gained popularity by offering accessible therapy services through various platforms, including specialized versions of pride counseling and teen counseling. However, beneath its user-friendly interface, the company engaged in practices that starkly contradicted its privacy assurances. According to the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, BetterHelp repeatedly urged users to take intake questionnaires, collecting sensitive information about their mental health under the promise of confidentiality. Statements such as, "Rest assured, any information provided in this questionnaire will stay private between you and your counselor." It fostered a sense of trust among your users. But contrary to these assurances, from 2013 to 2020, BetterHelp shared users' email addresses, IP addresses, and health questionnaire responses with third-party advertisers, including Facebook Snapchat, and Pinterest. This data exchange aimed to target users with advertisements, effectively turning personal mental health information into a marketing tool. The financial implications of this data sharing were significant. The FTC's complaint highlighted that BetterHelp's practices led to tens of thousands of new paying users and generated millions in revenue. In response to these allegations, BetterHelp agreed to a $7.8 million settlement in 2023, intended to provide partial refunds to affected customers. The settlement also included provisions to prohibit the company from sharing health data for advertising purposes in the future. And the commodification of mental health data has profound implications for its users. Individuals seeking support may unknowingly consent to sharing their sensitive information, leading to breaches of privacy and trust. The dissemination of personal data can result in targeted advertising that exploits users' I'm so mad. I'm just so mad. I'm sorry. I just get irritated. Oh my God. I'm just so mad. I get pissed off talking about this shit. Okay. We're going to refocus. We're going to recenter. Everything's okay. I got a lot of feelings. The dissemination of personal data can result in targeted advertising that exploits users' vulnerabilities, further exacerbating mental health challenges. Moreover, the proliferation of mental health apps and platforms raises concerns about the quality and efficacy of care. While digital therapy offers convenience, it also presents challenges related to data security and the potential for misdiagnosis or inadequate support. Users may navigate a complex landscape where their well-being intersects with corporate interests, often without full transparency. And if listening to this has made you want to throw your phone into the ocean, you're not alone. The good news is you don't have to disconnect from the world completely to reclaim some of your privacy. While tech companies have built $1 billion industry around your data, there are real steps you can take to limit how much data they collect and how they use it. Before you can protect yourself, it helps to know what you're up against. Big tech doesn't just collect data when you make an account or search for something. They track your clicks and scrolls. Every time you pause on a post or video, it's logged. Your location. Apps track where you are, even when you're not actively using them. Your messages and interactions. Many platforms analyze what you send, and comment on. Your device and browsing habits are also tracked. Even without cookies, fingerprinting techniques can identify your device across different sites. But small changes can make a huge difference. Adjusting these settings on your device and apps can drastically reduce how much data is collected. You can limit app permissions, go through your phone settings and turn off unnecessary location, microphone, and camera access, disable ad personalization through Google, Facebook, and TikTok. They all allow you to opt out of targeted ads, though they don't make it easy. You can also use privacy-focused browsers. You can also turn off tracking on your phone. Both iOS and Android allow you to disable tracking for different apps. And if you want to take privacy a step further, you can consider using services that don't rely on tracking at all, such as search engines like DuckDuckGo. There are email services that provide encrypted alternatives to Gmail. There are messaging apps like Signal, which is a great alternative to things like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. VPNs and browser extensions, tools like uBlock Origin, Privacy Badger, and VPNs can also help obscure your online footprint. Tech companies, though, don't just collect data. They manipulate your behavior. So, one of the biggest things you can do is stay aware of certain engagement traps, like infinite scroll and autoplay. They are designed to keep you engaged longer than you intend to be. Be aware of emotionally charged content. Platforms push posts that trigger strong emotional reactions. I've personally noticed TikTok tries to make me cry, and Facebook and Instagram try to piss me off. Also, self-diagnosis rabbit holes. Mental health content is curated to keep you watching and sometimes reinforcing negative self-perceptions. While individual actions help, large-scale change is necessary. Consider doing research and supporting an organization that you trust. But you can consider both the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which advocates for digital privacy rights, or the Center for Humane Technology, which pushes for ethical design in tech. We've talked about a lot here. This has been a big one. How tech companies profit off our vulnerabilities, how social media has evolved into data harvesting machines, and how even therapy isn't safe for monetization. It's unsettling, frustrating, and frankly infuriating. But here's the thing. You still have agency. Taking back control of your digital footprint isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. The goal is not to completely evade tracking because, let's be real, unless you're living off the grid with no internet, that's impossible. But you can make yourself harder to exploit. You can decide what parts of your life you freely hand over and what you choose to keep for yourself. Every small action matters. Every setting you adjust, every privacy tool you use, every time you think, do I really need to share this? Those are moments of resistance. And those moments add up. And that's the key. Autonomy. Tech companies bank on passive participation. They count on you not reading the terms and conditions. They count on you not questioning why certain posts keep showing up on your feed. But most importantly, they count on you feeling powerless to do anything about it anyway. But you aren't powerless. The fact that you're aware that you've made it to the end of this episode is already something they don't want. Awareness is dangerous. Awareness leads to questions, to actions, and to people demanding change. A more private, less manipulated digital experience is possible, but it requires collective action. You can support organizations that advocate for digital rights. You can help push for stronger consumer protections, like by calling your representatives. You can call out companies when they cross ethical lines. And you can talk about this, making sure people know what's happening, because tech giants rely on the fact that most of us don't. So the next time your feed serves you something that feels a little too personal, something eerily specific, something that makes you wonder, how the hell do they know that? Take a breath and remember, you're not crazy. You are kind of being watched. And while you can't stop the machine from watching, you can decide what's worth showing. This has been Beneath the Noise. My name is Emily Yatsko. Thank you for listening. You can email us at beneaththenoisepodcast@gmail.com. I hope to see you next time.